some of that stuff, most of the stuff that I've said was one proposal.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 20th, 2023 MEDC meeting. We are calling our meeting to order and opening it up to public comments. Dave, do we have anyone who's indicated an interest in making public comments?
We do not.
All right, then I'll move on to item number 2, financial report covering December 2022, January 2023, and February 2023. Oh, sorry, item number 1, approval of February 2023 regular meeting minutes. Sorry guys, I got a little excited. Does anyone have any comments, questions, concerns about the meeting minutes? Has everyone read them word for word?
No, not word for word, but I did have, I can't seem to find it. Where are the minutes in this packet?
They are on page 2 through 4, 5.
Our PDF page?
On the
Okay.
PDF pages, yeah, 2 through 5.
2 through 5, okay. Can I just look one real quick thing?
Yep.
I just want, I know we
Absolutely.
had the Charlie Diggs thing. I thought we had some discussions, and I don't see them here, regarding collaboration with the chamber. Well, remember we visited a little bit about the maybe possible collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, and
I believe that was in the board inquiry sort of section.
okay. So I just didn't see it made it into the meeting minutes, but I don't know. It could be. It was, these minutes are fairly,
Should look at the end of the minutes,
where?
under executive, or after.
After Cindy's engineer
Keep
report?
going a little bit further. Board
Oh,
inquiry. There's no comments on the board inquiry.
Yeah, you're right.
So it looks like we've missed some minutes. Should we,
Was that actually from the prior meeting's minutes? No, it's definitely on this one.
yeah.
Diana, do you mind looking into the comments about that? And let's table then our approval of the February meeting minutes to next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay. Now I will get to my. Oh, yes, I'd like to make a motion to table the February 20th, 2023 regular meeting minutes.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded to table the February 20th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of tabling the February 20th, 2023 regular meeting minutes say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion passes unanimously, and we will table the February 20th, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Oh, and I'd also like to note for the record that we do, in fact, have a quorum with 4 of us here. We are missing Carol, Dan, and Byron, though.
Can I just question these minutes, because they've always been so thorough? Is there something that's changed? I know Ryan is kind of...
Yes, I would like staff to comment on that,
Sure.
please.
So with the meeting videos, so meeting minutes are never verbatim of a conversation. With the videos, it's even less imperative. That said, we do want the important, points to get in here. One of the reasons that you see Diana here and you haven't seen her in the past, what she's been doing is watching the video online to transcribe minutes. With her here, she's going to have a better gauge of kind of what are the the highlights that the board talks about. Again, there will be a condensing of certain points of a discussion. Again, they're not intended to be this is literally everything we talked about, but it should be, again, to the important points. We certainly want to make sure those are in there. And with Diana here, I have a feeling that it'll be easier for her to...
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, yeah, these are pretty... This is Cliff Notes based on what we discussed, and I think it needs to have a little more substance to it. So just for the record, I think we need to make sure that we at least include, some of the hot topics that we discussed, so that we'll have it on the record for all intent and purposes. But I'm glad that you're here now. That's good.
I did feel like the previous minutes were probably a little bit too detailed for typical minutes, but This is,
The ones before?
yeah, the ones I was doing it even
Yeah,
before.
you were
my-
going verbatim, yeah.
Yeah, it was probably a little bit too detailed.
So we
But it was kind of hard to like, sometimes we like went everywhere. So it was kind of hard to condense that into a singular thought. So that was the difficulty behind the minutes.
We'll make some improvements over the coming months and keep, you guys, do like you're doing now, just, give us feedback and we'll balance,
Okay.
what the board is,
Yeah, it just needs to be balanced. I think I agree Ryan's was a little too detailed and this is a little not so much.
Sure.
So we just come together somewhere in the middle and we should be fine. Okay, that's all I got.
I'd like to say, though, that I greatly appreciated Ryan's efforts and his detailed nature, because you could miss a meeting and know exactly what happened after
Exactly,
without
yeah.
watching the video.
I would actually apologize before I made a comment to him because I knew it was going to go long for him.
And yeah, you don't want to discourage discussion either
Yeah.
because some guys writing minutes or whatever. You
Right.
want to have good conversation and then have cliff notes or summary at those
Yeah.
conversations.
It's a big job though, no matter what, who's doing it.
Right.
But thank
And that
you.
is, of course, the point of reading the minutes, to make sure that things that maybe you personally thought were an important point to bring up are in the minutes. In fact, that maybe as the note taker, she felt that it was maybe included in a different part of the minutes that she wrote down, but you feel that it needs to be highlighted as an important point by itself. So
That's good, okay.
that's
Well,
it.
That's a good point. That's why we vote on minutes. Because there's,
it just reminds us of what we promised or
yeah,
Yep,
said.
it's
Yeah.
condensed thoughts.
exactly.
Okay,
Everyone's right. Okay. Item number 2, financial report covering December 2022, just January 2023, and February 2023. All right, Carol's not here, but obviously, we've had a little bit of a break from having a financial person, so we're getting everything all at once. Most of our balance sheet stuff is as of February. The disbursements cover pretty much everything from the 3 months pages, and then you want to go to page, what page is this? 12 of the packet to see where we are on year-to-date, month-to-date, and budget remaining for each item in our budget.
yeah, good. Okay.
And that's as of February as well. So we're looking very good, I think, on our sales tax revenues. We're, so February is not quite it's 5 months to date, and we're well over half of the way there on our income.
Yeah, it's looking good. Okay, so should we make a motion to approve the minutes, the financial statement?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the financial statement for the month of February.
How about all 3 presented?
All 3 are presented? Oh, you're right, they all are 3 presented, okay. So for all 3 of the financial statements, year to date.
All right.
Anybody want a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the financial report, all 3 financial reports presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving the 3 financial reports covering December 2022, January 2023, and February 2023 say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve the financial reports covering December 2022, January 2023, and February 2023. Item number 3, consideration and possible action on a grant request not to exceed $3,000 for Freedom Fest 2023. Shannon, would you like to introduce the item?
Sure. Do I need to use the microphone?
No, I think we can all hear you. Or Dave, do you want to do it so we can hear it online?
Sure, if you would.
That's fine.
Turn it on real quick.
Okay. Sure. Good evening. I'm Shannon Reed with Montgomery Area Chamber, and we are the hosts organizing the Freedom Fest that happens on the first Saturday of July every year in honor of Independence Day celebration. And we are looking to once again partner with the city. Over the years since we've done this event, we started in 2013, and of course we did it in a very simple and modest fashion, and it was pretty laid back and easygoing, and over the course of time, obviously, we've grown in a community and also the world has changed. And so safety is a huge consideration when we gather all of our folks together. And so the cost for our law enforcement exceeds really the revenue that we generate as a festival. It's not necessarily a fundraiser, it's a community project that we do to bring Montgomery together. So we like to partner. We are reaching out to the city once again and MEDC to see if you guys would like to help us so that we can have the law enforcement that is needed and required by the city. And Public Works is also a portion that was added in last year, just so that we cover all our bases for the day of the event.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
I was going to say that it's something we did last year, and this would be money that doesn't leave the city accounts, but, you know, we get a list of who the officers are and what their rates are, and then we just sign the checks that go directly to them. And then for Public Works, the money gets transferred through to the fund that pays them directly.
Yeah, it's a great project. So can we make a motion? This is pretty much a no-brainer unless anybody has any other comments.
I'm just going to clarify, it's not coming out of the grant line, it's coming out of unallocated events line.
So is there a specific?
It says it in the discussion.
I was going to say,
that there's
I don't think
$30,000.
we have a specific event for Freedom Fest.
But we have unallocated events budget line?
Right, so we have an unallocated events line item.
So that's where it's coming out of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we approve the $3,000 grant for Freedom Fest 2023 to come out of the unallocated events budget.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve $3,000 for city costs related to Freedom Fest 2023 to come out of the unallocated events line item. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this line item?
No.
All in favor of spending $3,000 from the unallocated events line item for Freedom Fest 2023, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will spend $3,000 from the unallocated events line item for Freedom Fest 2023. Thank you, Shannon.
Good. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Item number 4, consideration and possible action on hosting a spring 2023 joint workshop with the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission on April 17th, 2023. Dave?
Directors, this body, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the City Council, have all talked about a workshop, a joint workshop, so you guys can share ideas, ensure the alignment of sort of the overall goals, and to understand kind of what role each board or body plays in the city's governance. So with that, I wanted to ask if the board would consider hosting the workshop, and that way it'll be on your regular meeting night, and we'll invite the P&Z and the City Council, who have all indicated that they would, not specific to the date, but that they are very interested in a joint workshop with each other to talk about, again, just kind of, big picture goals and where we're going and what the status is of each group. If you guys would consider hosting that, we'll have some light refreshments. I don't know the location yet. We are going to figure out if it makes sense to do it here, if it makes sense to do it at the community building, the community center, up off of Lone Star Parkway. Those are kind of our 3 available options to do it.
Good idea.
No, I think it's worth a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I
For
think
sure.
that the only thing that I would say is that there's obviously going to be some turnover on City Council.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it makes sense to wait till the month after that and do it after the election.
You certainly could.
You'll have you'll have 2 new members on City Council.
That's true.
When is the elections?
May?
First weekend in May.
Yeah, early May, so by the end of May, we'd probably really be looking at June by the, depending on the calendar and how long you have to, I don't know election law, but I know you have to wait a certain amount of time before the election is canvassed, and then you're appointing or swearing in.
How many would we, potentially, how many?
2.
Yeah, you're
Here,
I mean,
definitely
they
gonna have
can-
2 new members.
They probably don't show up anyway if they're planning on not, are they running? the two incumbents?
So there are
No,
there are
okay.
2 seats that have contested races, and each of the 2 seats have 2 people running for them, neither of which are current
Okay.
holders.
There's no incumbents.
Right.
that are running.
So Carol is running unopposed in place 1, so we know that we'll see her again. But the other 2 will certainly be newer faces to the city council in at least those seats.
'Cause they're-
You certainly could. I'll leave it to you guys. I admit to often getting tired of waiting on election cycles, but we're right around the corner of it. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of whether we want to be doing this in midsummer, whether we want to be doing this next month. And I'll defer to you guys. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer on it.
Probably not, but I mean, the sooner the better, I would assume.
Okay, let's do it next month
I'm an
then.
advocate for sooner the better.
Okay. Sounds good. I mean, and the candidates are certainly welcome to come because
Yep.
it's going to be an open meeting, so.
Well, they are, and they're, at least the ones I'm familiar with that are running for council, either have already been on council or they're familiar with the process, so it's.
Right.
You know, both for place 3, the 2 candidates that are running for place 3 have both previously served, either as the mayor or a council member.
Yeah.
So they're at least not starting from scratch, if you will, in terms of, an understanding of where the city's heading, what the big issues are, so.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not, we won't be too far ahead of them anyway, if it's somebody new shows up, so.
Right. I think, one of the, to my mind, the benefit, while city council is certainly a receiver of the benefit of a workshop because they're the ones who are driving, the legislative work that comes out of the city, I do see it, being very beneficial for both the EDC and the Planning and Zoning Commission to understand, what the council's desires are to be able to say, okay, that's the, direction, we can help with that, and we're going to help facilitate that, whether it's a P&Z action or a funding item that's, coming to EDC, so.
Well, and I think especially in terms of the amount of money that we're intending to spend over the next few years once our, planning comes to fruition and implementation, we need to make sure that they're on board because they ultimately permit us to spend the money that we've been entrusted with.
Yep.
So,
Can I just toss this out because Shannon just happens to be sitting here. I had no idea she was actually on our agenda, but I'm kind of glad she is now because Shannon, do you think the chamber, the Montgomery Area Chamber would have any, I know it's an open meeting and that kind of thing, would they have any interest in maybe participating in some way, at least from a demographic enlightenment, because you've got the software and you've got a lot of the tools that we may not have access to. Is that something that you think the chamber might be interested in bringing?
Yeah, if y'all need that, you just let me know.
Okay. Because I was trying to come up, making decisions a lot of times is kind of difficult when you don't really know where, all the growth is coming from. And so having some insight, and they're also got their ear to the ground with the legislative process with respect to taxes and things like that are big concerns right now, especially for businesses. So I know it's an open meeting, but bringing the chamber in as well, I think that's almost like a little mini summit, if you will, and probably would reap great benefits for all of us, I believe. Any thoughts on that, the rest of the guys?
I'd prefer to wait till after the election. Because you've got Carol and Byron already on the MEDC,
Yeah.
and the other 2 that we're swapping out would be fresh blood. So unless there's a reason to be more urgent on it, I don't know if there is.
It's just,
I'll probably miss the June meeting if I'm being honest because
Yeah,
we'll be traveling.
I think summer comes into play with this.
yeah,
So,
people start going out of town
yeah,
doing
I mean,
vacations.
we're pretty good at kicking the can down the road, so I think if we could.
I hate this kick the can thing. It's gotten out of control, it seems like.
Maybe we should specially invite the 4 candidates.
As long as they
And
don't make it like a political event. But I guess,
They're welcome to
to
show
sit
up.
in the audience as
Yeah.
spectators, not to speak. We'll have a specific
I don't
agenda.
disagree that, we want to make sure they get a seat at the table, but, we spend so much time, it's too many platitudes and not enough, getting down, getting things moving along,
that's fine.
But as far as involving the chamber, I mean,
I think maybe it'd be interesting to have, if Shannon could maybe do like a 10-minute intro of where we are and where the chamber thinks we're going in terms of growth in industries and that kind of thing, or even, you know, what you're seeing from the current turmoil in banking and interest rates and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they get a lot of feedback, I mean, because of like the event that they're hosting, the summit. But, you know, as businesses start looking at this area, for one reason or another, a lot of times the chamber is the first place they stop, you know, a new business.
We're still finalizing there, or we're still not even finalizing, we're putting the agenda together. So if Shannon is willing, I could, you know, I'd put you up toward the front so you could go ahead and get it out of the way, but I think it would really help set the stage in a way, you know, for those discussions on, you know, kind of what do we think our goals need to be as a joint, you know, council, P&Z, and EDC, because they're hearing, you know, they're getting real-time information, if you will, where the business community thinks they are. So council knows where the residents or the property owners think, you know, that they want them to be heading. But, you know, understanding, you know, kind of, so here's the business climate. I think it would really, you know, help the overall group to, again, kind of focus and talk about some things that the folks out there are talking about on the street in terms of, you know.
That's it right there.
So I think it helped to refine kind of the direction of the discussion, especially, you know, as it, you know, when we're talking about the business and sort of the work that, you know, this body more than any other one does, right?
100%.
Is that the original intention of your meeting, or is this changing on the fly here?
No,
This is on the fly kind of deal, huh?
It'll be a wide-ranging talk, but the piece that, or, you know, necessarily because we're, you know, council who looks at everything, the P&Z, which is strictly land use and planning, and then the EDC, which again is kind of wide-ranging, but is focused on economic development. I think for them to get, you know, I think it'd be helpful for the council to have just a 5 to 10 minute primer on where you guys see the business community, because you necessarily as a chamber, you know, are going to have more interactions and feedback, you know, from the, you know, the local business owners than any governmental body, including this one, you know. I mean, it's just, that's the nature of the chamber and the relationship aspect, you know, of what a chamber does. It might help, especially the council, to kind of think about, you know, here's what our community feels like the economic development needs are, which would help the council and the EDC to align those goals and say, okay, this is what we want to focus on.
100%.
So, yeah, not to give you homework, Shannon, just for showing up to.
That's what you get for showing up.
I'm here one night.
We're going to bootstrap it into another night, into another night.
Well, I think Dave said it best. The chamber has the ear of a lot of the local business. They do weekly mixers with several different businesses, new, old. They come together, they discuss, you know, the sort of where the drums are beating in the community, and she kind of knows where everything is headed and where at least where their mindset's at and where their concerns are. So to have that piece, that voice, I think tends to give us a complete perspective, and that's what we really need when we're making important decisions.
I think it'll also give more of a drive behind some of the things that this body's looking at, because, you know, we're affected, I think, or, you know, like we've been talking a lot more about mobility, we've been talking a lot more about like the TERS that's, you know, come up, and I think that that's something that City Council hasn't really been pushed by as heavily as we have, which I think comes more from the business perspective. So I think, you know, Shannon opening with that will give a little bit more context that will explain why we're coming at things from the angle that we're coming at.
Well, and to sort of reiterate or actually expand on that a little bit, you know, there's a lot of areas that are getting filled up a little south of us, and they need to bring their businesses up north to where we are. And so having those discussions now about TERS and other types of incentives would help, including mobility, would help us to sort of highlight where the changes, the possibilities for those changes are going to be, and to get other businesses in, which is what economic development is all about, to support this community that's growing so fast. So Chamber knows what's going on. They talk to each other and they know who the developers are, and Wade can tell you, I mean, people want to come here. It's growing, and it's important that we expand. Unfortunately, we're not a baby town anymore. We can still be kind of quaint, but we're not a baby town anymore. We're a baby town?
No. No, I mean, and whether Conroe is a good example or not, or even the Woodlands is, a lot of times it's the Chamber and the EDC working together. The Chamber a lot of times gets approached first, and then EDC kind of picks it up from there and works with the city council on attracting the right business, if it's somebody that we really want. And so we're at that point where we can be selective with developers and business.
That's a good feeling. You don't just have to fog a mirror.
Yeah.
Right.
What we've talked about before, it's okay for us to say no every
Right.
now and then.
And that message has to, I think, be collaboratively discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So does that mean that somebody would like to move that we support a spring 2023 joint workshop with the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission on April 17th, 2023?
I'm making a motion to.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Trying to get you in the game. Okay, I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve hosting a workshop on April 17th, 2023, including the $100 expenses. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item?
No.
All those in favor of hosting a workshop on April 17th, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will host a workshop on April 17th, 2023 with the City Council and Planning and Zoning and MEDC. Item number 5, consideration and possible action on adding Dave McCorkadle as an authorized signer on MEDC banking accounts. Dave?
Directors, I am going to be your primary staff liaison for the foreseeable future, and it would be beneficial to be able to be one of the 2 signers that's still required on all MEDC checks, and so that's what this item is asking for.
So I do have an issue, not with you. I am uncomfortable with the thought of you and Gary signing checks together. I would like it to be one administration and one board member
Sure.
at all times.
Sure.
So I don't know if that needs to be written into the bylaws, if we take Gary off as a signer, or how that works. But
Agreed.
I think that is something that I'd be more comfortable with.
Yep, you make a very good point. I'll find out, kind of what if it's a bylaw amendment, if it's a financial policy that you guys can set,
Right, or we just take him off, in which case then it doesn't really matter.
Right. It works as long as, both he and I are here and we know that, 2 staffers aren't going to be signing checks. It's going to be, 1 staff and 1 director. But, how do we set that, roadmap for when one of us is not here?
Yeah.
And we don't accidentally start.
I mean, I think it could be either or.
Right.
It doesn't matter if he stays on, just as long as it's either or.
Right.
And it's written that that's the way we.
Right, and I think we could probably wait, and go on a verbal okay until we go, get to our annual meeting in January and change the bylaws for that. I would be fine with that, because I trust you both to be men of your word. But, I think as a policy point, it makes sense to keep, the board in control of our financial decisions.
Yep.
Or at least, have some semblance of oversight anyway.
So would we want to make a motion that with the caveat that either or Dave and or Gary, along with a board of director member, would be eligible to sign MEDC checks?
I was going to say, I think motion to add him as an authorized signer on the banking accounts, and with the expectation that only one administration person will sign any check.
Okay, I second that.
Okay, it has
Good
been
job.
moved and seconded that we add Dave McCorkadle as an authorized signer on the MEDC bank accounts. and with the expectation that only one of Dave or Gary Palmer will sign any check. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of adding Dave McCorkadle as an authorized signer on the MED bank accounts and the expectation that only either Dave or Gary will sign any singular check? Right?
Aye.
Aye. This, okay. Motion carries, those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously, and we will add Dave McCorkadle as an authorized signer on the MEDC bank accounts. It got too long, I forgot where I was. All right. Item number 6, consideration of possible action on procuring advocacy services for mobility projects that will aid in economic development and improve quality of life in and around Montgomery. Dave?
Guys, I was not here at the last meeting, Gary was here, and so I watched the video, and, back to what, Ryan said earlier, this was one of those conversations that had a lot of points of connection and a lot of overlap with various things, and I just wanted to get some clarity from you guys on what you're looking for. So, one of the things that's going to be, I think, helpful in that comes out of the workshop is, some of the items that you guys discussed were really, there's an implication that the city is going to spend money on those things, or the city would normally spend money on those things. So is it the board is willing to pay for the things that we need, i.e. plans but then it's going to be council is going to have to adopt those plans. When we get to, going down to HGAC, TxDOT, or just about any other grant, they're going to want to see an adopted plan, right? There's the, going down and squeaking and, being the squeaky wheel, but if you're going to squeak, you need an adopted plan to say, this is exactly what I'm asking funding
This is
on.
where you're.
Yeah, I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I had the same exact thoughts when I watched part of the meeting last time and on this thing. Is we need, if we're going to be a squeaky wheel, we have to be squeaking about something, and that's the plan. We need to. You're not going to get any grant funding unless you have a plan of some sort
And
in
that's
place.
part of, I think, what we wanted was to have something that said, like, this is what we're doing next. Like, this is why we want money, as opposed to where we are now, which is like, we want all these things to happen. We've got a beautiful idea, but we have concrete plans. We want a piece of the money that's going around.
Yeah.
But we have to have something.
So if you want drainage projects, you need a drainage plan. If you want mobility projects, you need a mobility plan, things like that. So water sewer plans, same thing. If they're just not going to give us money to do something, they want to see that we've thought about it and are serious about it. And
Right.
So.
And that's what I want to do, and I feel like, kind of like what we were just talking about earlier with, Shannon opening up, I feel like where we are versus where the city is, we're kind of, the city has other priorities that don't include mobility. I feel like, where the MEDC is with the downtown design plan and the sort of other implications with the 105 improvements, we see what's happening and want to get ahead of it with our plans, and we want to go to TxDOT and say, like, these are our ideas, let's implement them before TxDOT kind of comes through and does all these other things. Or we see the congestion and the mobility problems, and we want to, but city council's kind of looking at other things. So I feel like it's almost incumbent on us to say, well, you guys do you, and for this is a huge problem that we can see coming in 2 or 3 years, and we need to, since you guys are doing this, I guess we'll do this, because it has to happen, somebody has to do it. And I would hope that they wouldn't say no if we're doing it with our piece of the tax revenue that we can hopefully afford to divert to some of this, especially if it wins grants.
So is this agenda item to approve locating a consultant or putting out an RFQ, RFP?
You've got up to and including that. What I really wanted to do is just to get a better sense of exactly what it was that you guys, were looking at and talking about again I think the end result of some of this, kind of the interface, I suppose, with council is going to be the city budget. You guys have, your budget, but ensuring that, both bodies are talking about, hey, if we're gonna go try and go after some of, X billions of dollars worth of transportation money, what plan do we need to go down and get that with, or be eligible for? And, does that involve city funds? Does that involve EDC funds? And if so, then the council, if it's only the EDC funds, again, I don't think anyone would turn down the EDC saying, hey, we're willing to fund that because we know it's important. But them having an idea and an understanding before they get to your budget,
Right.
and say, well, I don't know if I want to approve this, or why are you spending this money on that? They have an understanding of, hey, this is the goal that we're, working toward, and this is an objective that is, taking us one step closer to that.
Right. So I mean,
Well,
my
I think-
goal
what do you-
would be to take some of the ideas that we have from some of the work that's already been done and break it into a project, with its own portfolio and its own set of plans that, like Ryan said, you take it, this is our mobility project that we're looking for funding for this specific area to solve this specific problem. And this is another project. So we've got, 2 or 3 projects that you can immediately whip off the shelf, and we've got all of the backup for, the why, the traffic that goes through, what all has to happen, it's all bound and ready to go. It's not like a scramble for, oh my God, there's a call for funding. We have to put together, whatever it's called, bid or whatever, a project for them in 3 hours. We've already got things ready to go. Or even if we get the chance, like Lori said, that Kai's got the potential for meetings with TxDOT, with HGAC, in precinct 2, again, we can bring them our projects and say, look, this is where we're going. We've got this. I know you guys have, all of this money. We'd like to have this in your queue of projects that you're looking at, and it's something that, they have on their desk, they've got in their computer, it's on their list. But we don't have any of that right now. I feel like we need to break what we have up into discrete projects that are ready to present to people.
Don't we have a water and sewer plan, or is that currently
We
on?
do, so we've got a thoroughfare plan. It's just a matter of getting those, updated.
So how old is the
Which would involve
thoroughfare?
city funds and would be, city driven, but then, ensuring that the EDC knowing, hey, these are the things that, that we need on here in order to go get this funding. So let's make sure that when the city updates its thoroughfare plan, that it includes whatever elements on a thoroughfare plan, need to be there to meet the eligibility for some type of a grant. It almost sounded, and, again, this was, kind of me looking, from the outside, when I'm watching the video, like the EDC wants an engineer on staff. I mean, it's an engineer that's going to be driving this, or certainly at least, when you, look at the mobility, a transportation planner or something like that. But did it sound to anyone else, or is that what you guys were thinking that you were looking for? I think if we try to throw more at our city engineer, I don't see it working, because I think they have enough on their plate.
And they also don't have the contacts that we need. That's
Right.
the other problem, is we need somebody who has the contacts with the people that are looking at projects, putting projects in the queue, or, before people who have the decision-making power, and saying, this is a great project, you should consider this project. And I think it's engineers.
Yeah.
I don't think, I saw your comment about lobbying,
Yeah.
not being a use. I don't think we need a lobbyist. I think we need somebody who knows what's going on at, at the dirt level.
Yeah, the legislature right now is trying to cramp down. They're essentially, so the legislature's been working for about 6 years now on going after cities' control. And one of the things that they are doing now is there's a bill that would prevent what they call lobbying activities. So TML, which is the Texas,
Municipal League.
yep, they're a conglomerate of cities of all sizes, all across the state. They're very effective at, stopping some of these bad bills that sound okay on the surface, but what they really do is take local control away and move it to Austin, and which, doesn't work any better than taking away states' rights, investing them, with the federal government. So the lobbying, landscape is, which it, often has a bad word, but again, it's an advocate, for you. Lobbying is almost, almost a derisive term, but it's really an advocate for your interest. And so, whether it's, someone advocating to, our legislators on, hey, this is why we need these things. Letters, from elected officials helps, but it often helps to have staffers, talking to staffers. Once the, the elected side says, hey, yeah, this is a great idea, let's make this happen. You need the staffers, working together, and actually getting it done. So we just want to be mindful in how we frame what we're looking for. If we ensure that we're clear of lobbying activities, then we don't have to change gears, 6 months after we start this effort, essentially. And, again, just making sure that we're, advocating, certain projects and certain types of projects without, falling into the guise of lobbying.
I think if we had an engineer, essentially an engineer on staff or a part-time engineer helping us distill our projects and present them, that wouldn't really be lobbying, that's engineering.
Right. So
How do you find somebody like that?
you would, to me, you would craft what you're looking for in a request for qualifications, and you put that out and you get submittals. The RFP, RFQ process, which is where you say, hey, I've got a need. This is what the need is. Anyone who can fill that need is welcome to submit things, to us. I think that's a good way to do it. I think we all know that there are a lot of folks that we would, want to go right to, but I think it's good form to, to go through the process, because you don't know what you don't know.
And would that information come back to the board so that we could review it before we make a decision, or?
In terms of, yes, in terms of both this is exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You guys, put the stamp on that, and then, ultimately, who you would select would also be a decision of the board.
Okay.
So,
How does that work with our current city engineer? I mean, are we having two, you're talking about either on staff or having two different engineers working for the city? Why wouldn't we just
one
consolidate
would
that
be,
to a single?
so the city engineers is, driving the city bus, right? The issue, I think, comes when, the EDC has a priority. Well, it's not a city priority, it's an EDC priority, and certainly within the context of what the city wants to achieve, but it may not be the highest thing on the city's list or on the council's list. And so if you've got a consultant that you can look to and say, hey, this is, here's our established goals, so it's not, the new project of the month or the new project of the meeting, and suddenly the engineer for the EDC is, out, and running full steam. But if it's, these are our goals and we're working to achieve these goals, and there's overlap between what the city engineer does and what a consultant for the EDC would do. Again, the EDC's consultant isn't going to drive, the thoroughfare plan for the city. But there may be aspects of it that we, as an EDC, say, hey, we want to put this on the thoroughfare plan. This is why, because, we want to go after funding to fund this project. And so we want to amend that thoroughfare plan.
It seems like it'd be most economical for the city and the EDC to be on the same page, that we have one single engineer who can do both plan reviews, coordinating projects around the city, and knowing how everything it works together in the plan. It just seems like all that consolidated under a single company or individual would make more sense than having two split.
Even if you had extra people helping with the project? I mean, in other words, if you have, the city engineer is doing the oversight, but they have other people that can help drive the city bus, so to speak, in some of the other projects. I think what we're saying is the job's too big for one person. Is that kind of?
I don't know if it is. It's maybe
Yeah,
for
I
the
don't think
person
it's
that we
too-
have, maybe.
I mean, it's somebody, we're not gonna have the time to do it, but it's somebody that's delegated that position to, as the EDC,
Right.
head of the EDC.
It just seems like we've got two different people doing two different things. It seems a little bit not schizophrenic, but bipolar, like this engineer's doing this thing and this engineer, I want it to look like, it just seems like if we had one person, you could see both sides.
But to be frank, the current city engineer doesn't have the skill set or the connections to do what we want.
Right, and we don't get
so we're
that.
not getting the
So
services
any
that we're looking
recommendation?
for.
What
There's
would
no
you
way
pick?
we're gonna get that.
And so
So we can either say, forget it.
and our
or-
engineer is being paid by the city, basically.
Well,
We are.
no, if we want them to do something for us, then we have to pay them too.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we would be paying for something that we would get less than what we want.
That would be my concern, is whoever it is, they gotta be qualified and have a success rate of accomplishing this type of task,
Yeah.
It can't just be some typical.
So basically, we're talking about getting somebody from outside, right?
Which is what we did when we did our downtown design plan
Exactly.
as well.
I mean, it can't hurt to look, right? And see if there's somebody that does have some success in going to TxDOT and, putting together grant request and, aligning with, that's more your department, I mean, you guys are developers and engineers, but it's just, I don't think what they're saying is we don't have anybody on staff that can pull it off.
Yeah, I see the problem. We have our own desires that may not align necessarily with what the city's doing right now.
I mean,
Their
we-
current engineer, and they just renewed that contract, I think, too, so that's,
We do already know somebody who's doing this for us currently, so, that's another thing. But going through the RFP process would be the most above board.
And there is a person out there that we've talked about a little bit that I would love, I think he would volunteer coming here for a meeting just to answer questions about how they went through the process, and that was City of Navasota, and he's no longer there, but he's happens to be with Blau, but he, it wouldn't be that we're asking Blau to come talk, it would be him as kind of just suggesting how they went through the process and accomplished the grants and got that kicked off.
I think it'd be helpful to have some better understanding because, I mean, I'm totally a fish out of water. And I'm sure Carol and Dan, and maybe Dan's more familiar, but Byron, we may not know as much as these guys do and y'all do about this process. And just understanding it a little bit better and what we could do to kind of, I'm kind of like Wade, I just want to get this ball moving,
Right.
Let's just push, let's just get it moving. And if we need to do it the right way, through an RFP, that's fine, but let's do something,
Okay.
Let's
do an RFP to keep it above board, but to give credit where credit's due, Kyle and Lori have been doing a lot of work for us.
That you're talking about.
No.
No.
So Kyle and Lori, do you still work for Gunda? Is your name officially changed? Okay, I'm never gonna remember that. You'll have to tell me 20 times.
That's fine.
But, they're the ones who, after TxDOT told us no about 20 times, finally got the change order for the bricks and our medians. We got some meetings with TxDOT to talk about, what's happening from 149 West and when it's happening. I mean, they've been really helpful in contacting people and getting us connections. So again, that's half the battle is
Sure.
talking to somebody who doesn't say no and hang up the phone on you the second that you get through.
Right.
So,
And that's exactly why we're doing this,
Right.
trying to get ahead of it, so we're not retroactively going back after they've announced a project.
right, despite the fact that whatever that lady is from TxDOT, or maybe it's the county that says that the city of Montgomery is responsible for the entire delay and over budget of the 105 project. They were quite delayed.
Good try.
They were delayed for months before we even asked about the bricks, and we were able to
It was
get.
probably good they already had the delay.
It definitely helped us because once the cement was in, I think it's in. But it was nice to be able to finally get a hearing from people who could do something.
I'm just not clear on what this person would be doing for us. Like I get, okay, TxDOT, that's nice, but what are they, what's the goal?
So for me, the goal is to help us, we don't have staff except for Dave who does, some stuff for us, but we don't have people who like break stuff up. We don't have presentations. We don't have people who go to meetings for us. We don't have any of that.
But we don't have any good plans in place to really, to go express ourselves to TxDOT or to HDAC or
Yes,
anything like
but
that.
that's what I'd like, is some good plans.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Why can't we just do an RFQ for, okay, we're missing, what do we need as a city? We need a drainage plan, or do we need, mobility is a problem, so we pay for that specific thing, not necessarily an engineer. Because I just don't know where the direction's at. Because, we don't need an engineer to do that. We can go hire we can do an RFQ just for the specific needs that we have. So I'm not really, and to get those plans on the shelf, we don't need an engineer to do
But
that. We
once
can
they go on the shelf, then they just sit there. I mean, the city is
Yeah,
littered
so
with plans.
we're not there yet
that
though,
are
so I'm
doing
thinking,
nothing.
are we getting the cart before the horse? Like, we need the plans in place before we can start hiring someone to advocate for us and to get those implemented. Because what do we need if I go meet with the commissioner or go meet with TxDOT, what are we telling them? We're telling them, hey, we need things,
Right.
but we don't really know what we actually need because we don't have, we don't have those plans in place. So
Right,
that's what
so
I'm
we need
trying to do.
somebody with a technical background to tell us how many steps we have to back up and what we need to get there, plus going forward and putting together the whole thing. I think that's, we're like perennially stuck because we don't have a package, we don't have the missing steps, so we've got something that eventually we can do ourselves if we, take little bites of it, but we don't have what it takes to get funding.
So what would you suggest? Because we need plans today, because one.
Well, I mean, what are we trying to accomplish through this? I mean, we see mobility as a plan or transportation as a plan. There's specific things.
Let's call it mobility, because mobility is
Okay,
going to be.
and I've helped with working with Dave to go get funding for a plan, a mobility plan, but we don't know where that's at. Those are pre-qual stuff. So, I mean, I can help with those things if we have an idea of, hey, what do we need to
So are you
get
talking about mobility as in walking and biking,
Yeah.
or okay, so I'm talking about,
Oh,
we're talking about
transportation.
mobility.
Okay, well, that's
Let's call it
called, and that's a different
Sorry.
plan, but we have
I'm
a
not worried about
transportation
walkers.
plan, right, that the city's developed that you mentioned. How old is that?
So the thoroughfare plan for the city was last updated probably, it's been a few years since it was updated, but I think.
And does that have like
That's-
prioritization? I guess maybe I would like to look at it.
Yeah.
And look at the different plans. The water sewer plan, we don't have a drainage plan. We don't know if we really need one. And then a transportation plan, and then a mobility plan. And those are the kind of the things that if we have those plans in place and we can use those documents and take them to HGAC, to commissioners like, hey, we've got this need, we've got this specific road, it's been prioritized, it's been studied, it's got its pros and cons, it's got its benefits there, this is a good viable project, can you help fund it? That's the kind of thing, and I can help with that.
So
I just need a little bit we would need some direction on what are we trying to accomplish the MEDC, and that's what we need to meet with the city on, is they're more thinking water sewer because they've got a tremendous amount of growth coming through, and yeah, that's a different thing. We're looking more at transportation, getting people around the city. We have our own needs, but getting us on the same page and same table of what they want, what we need, and then we can look and focus, okay, the next step would be coming up with a plan, and then after we have the plan in place, we can go out and hire someone to advocate for us to go meet with the commissioner and say, hey, we pay for this study, we've got the proof and the meat behind this need that we have, can you help me with it? But I don't know if we're there yet, and that's why I'm confused, is if we don't even know what we want as a MEDC, how are we going to pay someone to go advocate for us when we don't even know what we want? So,
Well, I think in some ways we do know what we want, because we want 149, the north side in town.
but TxDOT's not going to listen to us if we don't have anything to kind of
Agreed.
back up.
I agree.
What do we want as a city from 149? Because TxDOT doesn't care what we have to say unless we have something to back up. Do we want 4 lanes? Do we want turning lanes? Or do we just want it to look prettier? And if that's the case, then okay, yeah, we can take the master plan that makes 149 look pretty and then send that to
Right,
TxDOT.
agreed, but you use that as the kind of the front page, but yeah, we need to have somebody who can help us put the backup in there and tell the story of how it all works together, the money that you need, because, you know, it'd be great if we could get a 90-10 or 80-20 funding for the whole project, but, you know, you need the intersection, you need the roundabout, and then there's Lone Star Parkway, if we're talking about that. I mean, I don't want the city to fund it, but it would be great if people would start looking at it. 2854, again, it would be great if they'd start looking at that. And I think that if we could advocate for that, that'd be a huge benefit to the city, even if it was our money in, oh, sorry, we're not advocating. If we could do some of the work that got that noticed as to how important that area was.
But we don't have any numbers behind any of that.
Well, that's part of the plan, right? So
Yeah.
getting the plans and doing the studies,
Yeah.
correct? So
Yeah.
I don't think they're disagreeing with you not to do it.
I was gonna say,
We're
have you
going to
noticed-
do it, we just need to go.
I just think about people on the other side being people like me, who only thing they care about are the numbers.
I was gonna
Like,
say,
I want
Brian,
to see
have
a
you noticed that the only
VCR.
person in the room who's been asking questions like that is the engineer? So that's one of the reasons I'm thinking we need an engineer, because you're the only one who knows what we need.
I know that.
I'm just
Well,
saying.
there's another engineer here, so.
Well,
I mean,
right,
we need
well, no, I'm an engineer too, but I only blow things up, so.
We need in order to convince other engineers to give us money, we have to show them
I agree.
why it works. And
I
that's
agree.
why I'm okay with paying someone to help go meet with commissioners or.
But not until we have a
And
plan.
not until we have an idea of what we actually want.
Right.
And okay, we know we want 149 to be more aesthetically pleasing and walkable.
And
So we have, that's one
It
thing.
has to work though, but underneath it all, it has
Yeah.
to be,
What-
traffic has to get
What
through
are some
town.
of your big, you were mentioning 2854,
I mean, I don't know if you mean we're not ready because we don't have plans, but we're ready today for transportation changes.
Yeah, I mean, but it's
there
more of
now.
like, okay, we all drive to 2854, and the county did their own transportation plan, and that was one of their highlights, was 2854 being congested.
Yeah, and TechSide doesn't even have it on their plans.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may end up having to be the commissioners that pay for it, part of it, or something like that. But but they created a plan for that purpose.
Right.
Because we know 2054 is terrible, because we drive it. We have to prove it on paper before we can meet with TxDOT.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. There's plans all around us, but internally to our city, do we have enough information to also go and advocate with numbers?
So is that
And-
stuff, I mean, you said you could help work on that. Is that stuff you want to take the initiative to do, or do you?
Well, I
want
mean,
to
I think
hire
on the
somebody to do it?
mobility one, I think we took a little bit of initiative on that, because I think the walkability sidewalk plan, and there are grants out there to help pay for that kind of stuff. Yeah, but there's other things, like if we do need to have, I guess I would like to look at our thoroughfare plan, or maybe I could even meet with people I know to say, hey, what's needed here for the city to help plan out. You know, is it traffic signals and getting better traffic flow through the city? Then that's, yeah, you would develop a plan to, you know, doing traffic counts and turn counts and projecting out how much our city's going to grow and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what goes into one of those plans. I just haven't seen ours to know exactly what's in it. So I wouldn't mind helping with that, yeah.
You know, again, I think that's where that workshop is gonna help, again, because there's gonna be, you know, things that, you know, any formal plan that we take or that anyone takes anywhere will have to be adopted by city council
Yeah.
to be, you know, worth its weight in paper. So, you know, kind of the EDC talking about, hey, look, these are some priorities that we're wanting to do. The city council saying, sure, we either need to budget for that, you know, so we can help on our end, and then the EDC can pay for whatever portion that the board feels like, hey, this is, you know, in our interest, but again, just in alignment of the two, to be able to understand, you know, where does each want to go, which helps us figure out, you know, again, what those steps are, what, in this case, you know, what the plans are that are needed to be able to go advocate for those.
Well, and a lot of these studies that we're talking about take a long time to get completed. So, I mean, that's where,
You know, there's some, you know, I know that 2854 is not a fun road to drive. I don't, you know, I'm not on it often. There's almost none of it within our our actual, jurisdiction.
Correct.
So,
That's right.
when we get to 2854, we've got to figure out, hey, does the EDC want to go spend money in Conroe's ETJ?
In the-
or
I can go meet with Commissioner Riley. I'm sure I can do that kind of stuff if that's what we want to do. 2054 is on one of his top priority roads.
Well,
And it's
yeah.
gonna come all the way up through here.
It is, and then
So-
149, and as far as the south.
That's Walker. Well, on the north side, it's Walker. And,
Right.
Yeah, and 149 on the south, I think, was part of his third program
Correct.
that he did too.
yeah,
So
that's kind of the 149 is the dividing line between 1 and 2. So
It's a
I'm not
weird
sure if
breakup,
it's
yeah,
split down the middle. or,
But then when you're doing that, you meet with Walker on 149 Lone Star Parkway, because he does like this when you talk about Lone Star Parkway, and it's somebody's got to take ownership at some point, because
but that's outside of our city. So I mean,
not all of it.
well, a lot of that stuff is like 149,
Lone Star Parkway belongs
2054.
to the county, but it's in the city limits.
Yeah.
So talking with commissioners is different than talking to entities like Texas. That's more of like, hey, commissioner, I'd like your help here. Can we help? That's different.
Well,
So I mean, if we're trying to pay someone to do that,
I think it all goes together, really. And again, relationships matter.
we just need somebody that, and I appreciate you saying you'll help, but I think you got another job to do.
well, yeah, that's part of my problem is I'm stretched super.
And that's where you need somebody that's very concentrated on doing this, because all of it takes a lot of time, regardless. And we're talking, if we're talking starting today, and we're just gonna kind of pick and choose a little bit, that's 2-3 years down the road before we even see any results. And it's
a lot of these, large, transportation projects, man, they are long timelines. I mean,
Right.
they're
And we're
get
just-
on this plan for 5 years, get on the radar of TxDOT for 5 years to move it up to the,
right.
kind of the next
Well,
phase.
it's not even
They
on
are-
TxDOT's radar, so I
Yeah,
think that's
it's-
why commissioners are taking the lead
Exactly.
on these 2054. But I mean, they have road bonds and they've got their own political side of things too.
And we
And I don't even know if a road bond's coming out this year, but
Well, and we
that's how
kind of
we're.
get lost in the mix, because Charlie focuses on Magnolia and Robert
Yeah.
focuses on Willis and
Yeah.
North Conroe. And so we're kind of a stepchild in a way. And if we get some money, we get some money, but a lot of times we're overlooked, because they don't see the growth immediately like they see everywhere else. I don't know, it's going to catch up to us, because it's great, we've got a lot of people moving here, but the gridlock is going to cause so much havoc that businesses overlook you too, because they don't want to be a part of something that doesn't have mobility or transportation. It's a domino effect,
So I don't disagree with what you're saying, Ren, but I feel like, having an engineer to distill what it is that we have, what it is that we need, to be able to convince other engineers and talk to other engineers is kind of where it's at, because nobody really has, even when you help, you don't have the time to do what's essentially another part-time job.
Well, maybe Ryan can kind of oversight,
yeah.
instead of taking the lead, just have some oversight, because he speaks the same language.
That'd be
And,
useful.
Get
maybe,
the ball rolling.
yeah, just get it moving.
Do you
Because
think
if it's a
that
true,
you could maybe help Dave distill what it is we need for an RFQ?
Yeah, I can.
And if you
Probably
don't
start
mind me
now that you're not taking notes anymore, you got all kinds of time.
Try to figure out. That's why I'm kind of asking these questions, like, what are we trying to get to, so that I can help, point us in the right direction. Because from my side of things, I'm like, man, if we're going to advocate going to HGAC's, that's different than going talking, having lunch with the commissioner. Those are different conversations. Those are different approaches.
Right,
Those
which is why you need different presentations for different audiences. You
Right.
definitely need to be able to have something that speaks to a variety of different people who have the money.
And there are those things, like you mentioned, beautification, whether it's 105 or 149, kind of controlling those aspects. Because once it's done, you can't go back. And then, HCAC at some point when we finally figure out South Lone Star Parkway, because that would completely open up a lot of the headaches headaches that we're having right now.
Yeah,
And I think as well, having the beautiful pictures isn't a bad thing because, you know, when politicians like to do cutting ceremonies, they don't really love it on top of dirt piles and, you know, ugly cinder block buildings. They like it in front of things that look magnificent. So, you know, if you can say, this is where we're going, and oh, by the way, you know, we've got all these, you know, road cuts here and this and that, you know, that it's sort of nice to have both the beautiful stuff and the nitty gritty behind it to show that you're going to be spending the money
Yeah, it
wisely.
obviously happens because you drive to the smaller communities that are used to be smaller communities, you know, South Lake, Texas, or Dripping Springs, or, you know, they obviously got ahead of it and made it happen the way they wanted it.
yeah, like Lakeway and.
Yeah,
just wanted to-
Sugarland, you know, I mean,
Right.
you don't want to be all red brick everywhere, but they obviously got things the way they wanted it
Yeah.
by getting ahead of it.
Okay, so where do we go from here? Do we
Why
let
don't
these
you
guys get
two
together?
work together and we'll try this again at the next meeting?
Maybe the thoroughfare plan to start with?
I would just like to see what plans we have, and then I'll try to condense in
I
my
was gonna
own.
say, I'd like to see it as, again, let's try for an RFQ or possible action, and if we need to update the thoroughfare plan, put that on as a separate action item.
So it sounds like the thoroughfare plan is going to be the greatest impact. It's the lowest hanging fruit to make the biggest difference, but we're still looking at 2 to 3 years out, maybe 5 years out. Is that what we're talking about, or
I don't think
longer?
we can afford to wait that long.
A plan, can you probably do a plan within a year, or, and getting it all set up maybe a year and a half, but we've got a water sewer plan, and we've also got, I don't know, I would just like to see what
Yeah,
those
and the
look like.
thoroughfare plan does exist. I mean, you can always update certain aspects of it that are part of the key weaknesses or the key areas of interest without updating the absolutely entire
Right.
thing.
You know, Redbird Meadows that's coming in over here on the southwest side,
Yeah.
you know, was an example of, we worked both, the city worked with the developer as well as Charlie Riley, because he was going through a precinct 2 mobility study. So we worked with him on, you know, the changes that both the city and the developer felt like, okay, you know, the plan was just a very basic overview of where we want it. But then when you get down to site design, you start, you know, then looking at, well, we knew it was going to go here, but now exactly, you know, where is it going to go? So those are stuff, or those types of things, you know, like Becky talked about, the incremental changes, you know, that's what you do, you know, as you get the information going from one day we want a loop on the south side of town, okay, because none of it happens without the developers and without the landowner, you know, doing it. You know, city is in the business of maintaining streets, not building new streets.
Right.
It is, you know, same with water and sewer lines. We're in the business of maintaining them, but we're not going to go out and build a whole bunch of new ones. You know, that falls to the development community to do that.
Gotcha.
So, but again, you know, just an update of these plans as we go along, but I'll work with Ryan over the next month, send him, you know, kind of, so here's the plans that we have, here's some thoughts, and we can go back and forth on kind of,
Yeah.
you know, what makes the most sense, and see if the two of us can get a sense of what
Okay.
the,
So this means that it'll impinge on our spring 2023 joint workshop.
so
So,
we can, my intent is to have a short EDC meeting to dispense with any business items that are, you know, that the EDC needs to do. In either before would be my preference, you know,
Okay.
knock out any business items that we need to knock out so we don't, you know, lose the opportunity for a meeting, but the, kind of the focus of the evening would be the workshop. But again, that's not to punt anything that we need to, you know, to take action on. So,
Okay.
I think that's good, and then when we get together for that workshop, we would have some more fuel for the potential discussions going forward.
and
Right.
Which would be
this
fun.
is in some ways like an absolute poster child for why the meeting needs to happen. It's
Yeah.
because, you know, we're doing something that really, I don't want to say infringes on, but it definitely butts up against, you know, what city council does.
Yeah, you know,
Next
there's an
time.
override, you know, a shared goal, and like, hey, let's make sure that they know what we're doing, we know what they're doing, and, you know, where our efforts are, you know.
Are y'all hearing some of the same comments right now currently from the city council? I mean, some of the same ideas?
In terms of the workshop overall?
Well, no, just things that need to happen.
Sure, yeah, I think, you know, in large part, you know, so the South Loop, again, to me, it's a tough conversation. We feel like, yep, you know we want it, but again, until there's a developer, a large landowner moving, you know, the nice thing with the, you know, I just don't know where the money comes from, right? You know, I mean, that's the key is, you know, where does the money come from? And that's back to the, if we can find someone to say, hey, we're gonna go, you know, we know what needs to be done to sit down in front of TxDOT, in front of GAC, in front of a commissioner. So we know when we go in there, we're not just squeaking, we're squeaking with, you know, a purpose. Here's exactly what you need to get this project on your books. We understand that that they've got their own, you know, list of projects that they want to get done. We're just trying to help get this one on the list and, you know, get it attention. But the key is getting that stuff locked down so we, again, have something to go down there with. Not just, you know, general stories about how bad traffic is or something like that, because that'll get us not very much. So, but if you guys let me take this back, I'll work with Ryan and we'll have you guys a little more food for thought at the next meeting.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I move that we table item number 6.
Yes.
Second.
Do I hear a second then?
Yeah, I second.
All those in favor of tabling item number 6, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously, and we will table item number 6. Item number 7, city engineers report. Dave?
Directors, I'll point you to page 50 of your packets, which is about 3 pages in on the engineer's report, where we start with the development. Certainly, if you want to talk about the infrastructure stuff on the previous 2 pages, I'm happy to do it. But some of the big developments that are moving through, there's A through D. They're on the list. Town Creek Storage 2 is not a big development, but it's the expansion of a storage facility out by the high school. Hills of Town Creek 5 is right now on hold, and an indefinite hold from what we understand. Just don't think the economics worked with the builder, the landowner, and the developer. The previous sections of Hills of Town Creek didn't really only involve 2 folks, because the landowner and the developer were one and the same, so he could, you know, align his, you know, cost to benefit, you know, ratio as he needed. With 3 folks in there, I don't think the numbers worked for him. What the builder needed and what the developer was going to have to pay to put it all in, I don't think that worked. So, page 51, I'm skipping a couple there, but as we get down, you guys have seen the Popeyes that's under construction now. There's a Dutch Brothers Coffee going next to that down by Kroger. Discount Tire has approved plans, just are radio silent on breaking ground. Just as a reminder, one of the first pieces of it that they have committed to doing is completing that little gap in the roadway or in the private drive on the north side there, kind of where the Blue Wave car wash is, again, with the idea that someone can then get to Kroger without going through. I know that you guys have talked about the other private drive there, but that would just be, you know, kind of, again, just one little piece that gets traffic off of 105. If you've been on 1097 North, or East rather, just past Terra Vista, they're doing a lot of clearing for a Pulte subdivision, which is going to be 45-foot lots, smallest we've got in the city, so we'll see how that, you know, takes shape.
How many of those are going in?
309 homes, all total. There's 3 phases of about 100 homes each. They intend, their schedule right now is to deliver 100 lots right at the tail end of this calendar year. So we should see about 100 lots start then, with the others coming online in about 3 to 6 months each after that.
So Dave, if you had to put a number to it, how many with Redbird or Redbird Meadows, and how many homes in this, just in the maybe two zip codes, 16 and 56, do you think that we should have in the next 3 to 5 years? How many rooftops do you think?
These 2 developments alone are right at 1,000. There's, more or less, just under 1,000 homes. That's, says nothing about the infill. So Waterstone is the big one for us, that there's a lot of infill lots left. The subdivisions are platted. They're also working on a couple new sections of Waterstone, but the Section 2, which you can't really see from the, from Buffalo Springs Drive because it's out, kind of further east. But forget when it was developed, but say, 7, 8 years ago, or, whenever it was that, it was developed, just they never built on it. One of the big builders that came online for Town Creek Crossing bought all of those lots to keep working in the city. So we'll see about 100 more homes out of Waterstone, within the next year or so. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500, if I had to guess, and those last, the last 500 are ones that we just don't know about yet. There's
2,500 homes?
in the next, say,
3 to 5
years from now, I would suspect, close to, somewhere in the 2,000 range. I just don't know.
And that's not even including apartments or anything like that.
Right. For us, the multifamily, the biggest, while our zoning controls a lot of the multifamily, the big unknown is the Buffalo Springs plan development, which is, essentially all of Buffalo Springs. The majority of the plan development is, eligible for single-family, commercial, multifamily. So we don't really know
where it's
what
going to land.
all's been, right. It's, almost impossible to predict, what would go in there, because it could be any number of things according to the zoning that's on it. So,
And there's still 20 acres of multifamily allowed
That's
outside of it as well, along 149 and a little bit in 105.
yeah.
So is the lot minimum still 75 feet?
It is. The council wants to dial that back, and so we're going through the Planning and Zoning Commission now. They were the council, which is a good example again of how a workshop is going to help. So the council wanted to push through a smaller lot size, and they wanted to do it fast because it's one number we can change. And so we took it to Planning and Zoning, talked about it. They said, hey, we'd really like some more info. We'd really like to study some neighborhoods rather than just go for the, hey, we just want to make the lot smaller.
Yeah.
We really want to, have a better idea of, what the finished product and kind of the quality of life is, or, what are the pros and cons. So,
I would rather not see them rush through that because, like Tomball, for instance, has turned down multiple developments for tight lot development because
it seems really easy because,
the
again,
growth.
it's one number, and it's like, look, all we got to do is just change one number.
Yeah.
But, man, there's a lot of implications.
Is it because they just don't want to do a variance every time a
Yeah, I think
developer
they were
comes in?
tired of that. They felt like, well, if our standard 75 lot or a 75-foot wide lot, if that's just not feasible, outside of a really high-end, product that there's not a demand for,
Well, that's where I would love for them to study that because what's the point of doing tight lot development everywhere and having lower price points come in?
Right.
Yeah.
It's
The 75-foot lot is, I agree, it's not always feasible, but that gives you the strength to kind of dictate what happens.
right.
If you're going to give a variance, then at least give a variance to somebody that's reputable. And instead of somebody sitting there in front of you saying, I can't do it, you're going to have to give me this variance. That just,
Right. I always saw it as a nice kind of a checkpoint.
yeah.
Some on, but every council member is different. Some just feel like, look, I don't want all of these exceptions always coming to me, and that's a valid thing to think too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we can get to a point where what council wants is kind of a look, these are our standards. You either meet these or don't come asking.
Yeah.
The flip side is you got to be careful not to get down, to, such a, where you've given away kind of everything that you hope to get out of a community just in pursuit of not asking for, someone not having to get a variance. So,
Right.
so there's a middle ground, certainly that we're looking for, and so the P&Z is going to, look at some different ideas, talk about, what the pros and cons are, and to me, as appealing as a one-size-fits-all, this is just it, seems like a very simple thing to think about. I think that it's tough to apply to every single site, because I think, at least in my mind, what would happen is if you just approve, say, 55-foot lots or 50-foot lots, that's exactly what you're going to get every
That's all
single
you're gonna
time. No matter who the builder is, no matter what the product's like, they're coming and they're doing that. And
They're
I
gonna
think that's
come, they're gonna come here and be gone tomorrow. They
Right.
don't care. You know, that's
Or
just the
worse, you're
developer's
gonna get people
mindset.
say, well, I can't do this for 55-foot lots, and
Say,
you're gonna have to
well-
give me the same amount of variances you were given before. And so
Yeah,
you're gonna be whittling down to 49, 48.
Well, that's what I mean. You know, I would be hard pressed to change it just because you lose all control then.
yeah. I think, to me, what, one of the benefits of, having, different sized lots, I think in my mind, the best solution is one that, say, there's 3, lot size options. And they're not even the same, I like the idea of a neighborhood where that's not all full of the same size lot, right? Where you have, a dozen or so townhomes up, near the entrance of the subdivision. You've got some medium-sized lots, you've got some larger-sized lots, to be able to but I think if you can craft a framework to say, if you're going to build 55-foot lots, these are the things that you're going to do. If you can get to that point where, again, the city's interests are always first, and the economics of either the home builder or the developer are taken into account, but they're not the driving force behind why we're allowing that type of a development. But, again, if you build, 75-foot lots, okay, you don't need to put any internal parks in your neighborhood or anything like that, because everybody's got the space in their own yards. Or, is it, well, if you're going to do 55-foot lots, you can only have, this percentage of them out of your whole subdivision. Your others have to be something different. Here's the, the neighborhood amenities that you would have to have with that. That's more than just, the open space that you can see, but, can you use it? And so, again, I think seems easy to say, hey, we just want to change one number. But there's a whole lot that goes in.
Well, that gets to my point where we don't have to say yes all the time anymore.
Right.
I mean, we're going to be a starter home community is what we'll end up ultimately being. And if I'm a developer with that mindset, I'm going to maximize every single dollar I can get out of that deal, and I'm done.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care what Montgomery looks like at the end of the day. If I can get in, get out in 5 years, who cares?
So
if this council's going to approve it, he has no incentive to do anything but the bare minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that conversation's ongoing on the lot sizes. See what else is on the development world.
Maybe we should have Wade on the agenda for 5 or 10 minutes at our
Right.
meeting.
Gospel reading by Wade.
Hey, good enough. I don't want to regret not saying anything.
Right. Last one I'll touch on the development. You guys ought to start seeing Lupe Tortilla breaking ground. Boy, they were anxious to get rolling, and I don't know when they're going to be breaking ground, but they've got a permit. They're approved on the development side, so that's more East End activity that we ought to see soon.
And I can't believe my project isn't on here. I'm building a garage.
Becky's building a garage, which is going to significantly
I
impact.
didn't see it on the development file.
We're going to rag tag you next week.
Yeah.
But I'll be happy to answer any questions you've got in the engineer's report. Again, this was given to the council last month at their late February meeting. So,
What's exciting?
there's a lot going
It's
on.
very exciting. Yay.
There's a lot not going on that needs to be going on.
We've also got like a YouTube group behind me building the house. Have y'all seen
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just Jay Biddy called me, Justin Biddy, the dirt guy. He said, man, I'm supposed to be, they messed something up. They got into some pipes or something. And called me and asked me if I could come over there and I said, I don't know what's underneath the ground. How would I have a clue? Anyway, it's a YouTube group that's, right?
Yeah.
They're doing a...
Yeah, they're in like a DIY or do-it-yourself.
Yeah, and they're
DIY
filming.
video.
Did y'all know about that?
Yeah, so there's a father and son team.
Yeah.
That are, basically they either go in and I think they bought the house with the intent of remodeling it.
Right.
Bought it sight unseen.
Yeah,
How that goes,
they're getting their tail handed to them.
So they
But
are.
at least they're like on the videos, they're honest. Like we don't know what we're doing. So,
I had a staff member ask me the other day, said, hey, they're doing, I saw in their video that they're doing this, and I was like, look, no one is going to watch a YouTube video that says, hey, this is super boring, it's just normal stuff, but you've got to kind of create that,
Yeah.
suspense or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
drama. And,
yeah. So,
Which house is it?
where Paul lived,
That's right.
Caroline, kind of right, the little small white one with
Got it.
the
Yeah.
nativity scene up in
Yep.
August.
Yep, I
Yeah.
know which one you're talking about.
Anything else going on with the city's property that used to be the block awning night?
The inspection place. Right now, I think we should have the appraisal back. Council wanted an appraisal just to look at the idea of selling it. I'm trying my hardest to talk them into, if the intent is to sell it, please, let's peel off some land for parking. It's going to be really hard, for the EDC, kind of for your guys, understanding of, because the downtown plan, even better than, what the
Right
council
across the
does.
street from me. It's,
The nice inspection,
Oh, okay.
where they bought, and they were gonna make
Oh,
it
yeah,
a
yeah.
police station, and then they changed gears
Okay.
on it, and back last summer, I asked council, look, there's no way that we have the staff right now to take this project on. There was some the council felt like they approved one thing, then they felt like they didn't want that thing, basically, and which is to the point earlier that we were talking about, well, you get a few new members on council, and so the previous council said, hey, we know exactly what we're doing. The new council says, wait a minute, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And so I said, look, rather than try to hash all this out now, if we can, wait on this, but, so back to the downtown plan, in my mind, before we take away one, parking spot, it is incumbent on us to put another one somewhere that's close and accessible,
Yeah.
because that's an argument that we will not win.
I wouldn't sell anything. You're never gonna have the opportunity to buy it again.
Right. So we'll see what they want to do with it, that's, kind of their
Once it's
long
gone, it's
term.
gone.
That's true.
Then it prices itself outside of purchasing it. Yeah.
That's great
So,
news.
so we'll see what the appraisal comes back at. So,
Good for you.
right now, it's
Helps you all day.
Great. Does anyone have anything
Keep
for
it.
board inquiry?
What's that?
Board inquiry.
What-
This is your chance to get something in your section.
I've
Board
already talked.
inquiry. Do you have any questions, comments, topics for next meeting?
Is there any desire or interest? We've got a piece of property on the corner there that we could use for parking, like temporarily. Is there any interest in us using that for parking? I mean, in the later we could develop it into something
Are you
else.
talking
but-
about the Adams block?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's right there off the street. We could put gravel parking down, as a temporary measure.
I wouldn't, but
Well,
I
it's
mean,
better
we
than
might,
not
we
doing
might have to
anything.
kill trees though, that's my only thing, but it's just,
Oh, no.
but I mean, unless we could get it to work around
Hopefully
it,
there's no
but
grave underneath.
Where, how far down does McCown scope go? Does it go to 105? Just stops at Caroline, right? So, certainly, there's some stuff that we could do, kind of, tinkering around the edges where we're not making a big investment to then, change gears with another, thought process, but.
I'm thinking like gravel parking around the trees, just to get some spaces up there and make visibility, like, hey, you can park here if you just want to come inside our city.
I
for a
wouldn't
little
do
bit,
it
but-
as long as McCown is open to 105. I think that'd be a disaster.
Yeah.
If you did nose-in parking and that had people backing up on that narrow section of McCown, I think that'd be terrible.
But I'm also talking maybe even internally in the lot too. I don't know how that would.
It's very
Work.
squashy in there.
Why don't we put
What do
it
you
on
think?
the agenda for next time and we can visit about it? Think about it a little bit. Because we need more parking. 100% need more parking.
I think it'd be extremely unattractive in the
It would be
Gateway
unattractive.
Center.
I'm if there's like a way
The
we can make it
gateway corner.
attractive though. I don't know. I mean, you could do like some aesthetics around it, do nice black gravel parking or something, make it kind of fit. I'm just saying it's right now.
We could put a food truck on there.
Put,
I don't know if that's.
just gas station on there while we're at it too.
If Jeff would like it on the
It's
agenda,
just thinking, we're desperate for parking and we have empty space right there.
If the board would like it on the agenda, it shall go on the agenda. There's never been
And y'all can shoot
a,
down my ideas, just,
We're never going to do that. You were a great note taker. I'm sorry. I get a little
all
punchy.
right,
this time.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
obviously the meeting has run on too long. You guys are getting giddy over there.
Yes.
All right, I'll make a motion that the meeting adjourn.
a second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The meeting adjourned unanimously at 7:29.
Yes.
Thanks, y'all.
Talk to you.
Whitney. Yeah, tomorrow.
Oh, good.
Well, Steven, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a Steve.
You know, so he's going out to the Hockley property. It's completed, it's finished.
Yes, that is
He's
so
also
great.
coming to Hodgepodge.
So great.